my name is Alexandra Dio. I'm a freshman at the University of Minnesota, and today I will be discussing the question, should traumatic experiences/memories be held onto? Do those experiences help or harm people's mental growth and overall health? Warning, I will be describing some traumatic and psychologically distressing content, including suicide, PTSD, BPD, and other mental health concerns. To begin, I came to this question, do traumatic experiences help or harm people's mental growth, while writing a narrative about my own experiences with social anxiety, opening up to my friends about it, and its impacts on my future friendships and mental health. I found another narrative written by Beth Wainwright posted on the blog The Mighty. This website provides first-hand personal experiences about people's mental health written by those people. Beth writes about her recovery experience with PTSD and BPD, and opens up about that to her family and friends. As I became more determined to remove the stigma that I experienced staying quiet about mental illness, I became more open intrinsically as a person, stopped hiding behind walls, but I still told nobody about my trauma and kept those walls high. She also writes about her recovery experience. Recovery itself is something one can only do alone, but a good support network can make it easier to undertake. I can't help but agree with her as I think of my own struggles and experience with getting therapy. It is a big, scary step to take, especially knowing only you can do it. These are the main two themes I'll be discussing in this podcast: recovery and sharing the experience of trauma. Before diving deeper into the topic of psychological trauma, I'd like to explain what trauma is and what it can look like with the help of a more popular, shorter source called helpguide.org. This particular article, published in 2022 by Help Guide creators Robinson, Smith, and Siegel, describes trauma to be the result of extraordinary, stressful events that shatter your sense of security, making you feel helpless in a dangerous world. It can be caused by one-time events like an accident or a violent attack, ongoing stress such as experiencing repeated abuse, terminal illness, or living in a dangerous environment, or even overlooked experiences like surgery, loss, a breakup, or verbal abuse. Help Guide goes on to highlight childhood trauma as a special cause because when childhood trauma is not resolved, a sense of fear and helplessness carries over into adulthood, setting the stage for further trauma. These traumatic experiences can manifest symptoms like anxiety, fear, mood swings, intense anger, guilt, shame, isolation, fatigue, insomnia, endless agitation, and others. This is only a basic overview of psychological trauma and its daily effects. This isn't to say that these are the only symptoms or the primary identifiers of trauma. Trauma can appear and treat different people differently. In my experience, I have the symptoms of fear, isolation, and anxiety as a result of past experiences. Beth Wainwright writes that she experienced I got better at expressing my needs and emotions, something I had previously struggled with. I felt a great deal of shame around what had happened to me. Personally, I think shame has a big impact on mental health that can be easily overlooked. The guilt and shame that you can feel when experiencing illness are so easily overlooked when you're feeling this way, showing that different people endure different feelings and traumas is not all linear. Next, I'll be discussing the effects of psychological trauma, especially trauma rooted deep in the past, like childhood trauma, with the help of Psych Central, published in 2022 by Simone Marie and psychologist Bethany Judy. This popular source explains that trauma can freeze your emotional response at the age you experienced it. Clinical psychologist Dr. Carla Marie Manley says that this regression can impede healthy development. She goes on to explain that this is because the trauma is not properly processed. It can rewire your brain in such a way that ultimately influences your thought patterns and behavioral responses as you get older. This lack of development can affect adults' social and behavioral responses because their entire way of being may be formed around the traumatic incident. In adulthood, these symptoms can manifest into people-pleasing, dissociation, excessive anxiety, difficulty maintaining relationships, and more. Beth Wainwright writes about how when she opened up about her mental illness and trauma to her friends and family. It isn't something you can really test the waters for and could not preempt the various reactions I would receive. These responses have varied from unbridled love and sympathy to apparent uncaring and total insensitivity. To me, gaining that growth and taking the first step is really dependent on you. Though you cannot immediately solve the challenges that will come with recovery and being open, it'll add to your growth. In my experience, this was the most frustrating step. Opening up to my friends and family about what I fear and feel was difficult because I knew they might not understand or agree with me. Warning, in this section, I will be discussing a source that mentions suicide. Please skip to 7:30. Timestamp if you wish to skip. Now that we know an overview of trauma and its common effects, let's continue the recovery process. This is from a research study from Sage Journals published in 2018 by psychiatrist Signe Steege and Professor Margaretha Haverson, an academic source for healthcare professionals and students. The study includes a case of Petra, a woman who was in the middle of her recovery process from childhood trauma when her husband unexpectedly took his own life, giving the researcher a new intention to explore new trauma might influence the recovery process after traumatization. Petra told them that before the therapy process, she felt, I had been repressing everything. Things have happened. I have repressed it and moved on, and I have been going on like that. Until she met her husband, Harak, who recommended she seek therapy help. Upon her husband's death, she felt she would collapse, but realized she has become confident now. It has never been that before, because the strength has been something I have been grasping for. I actually have strength and hold on to that and focus on that. She explains that the therapy group and individual process taught her how the human brain works with trauma, how the body reacts, and how to be self-aware. Because she was in the process of recovery and had newfound skills and confidence in her abilities, she was able to grow after her husband's death instead of regress. She finally says, when I ended the stabilization group and this treatment and everything, I felt like I was standing tall, just like a tree that stands really steady. Even with all that has happened to me now, nothing has made me topple. I have swayed a lot, but that is okay in a way. Though that was a short summary of the entire study, those key elements highlight the usefulness of therapy despite the unknown and spontaneous circumstances of life. Beth Wainwright writes on her experience with therapy and helping her share it with loved ones. Having someone push you to name, understand, and make peace with your judgments, behaviors, and feelings is incredibly tough going. Later on adds, I have pushed myself to talk to my therapist about my trauma, and in doing so, I've started to open up with a select few of my loved ones. Having experienced this, I can say it is a harrowing and exhausting, but so worth it when you can finally understand what you are feeling. I share similar experiences opening up to my family and close friends about my anxiety and other mental concerns. It takes a lot of courage and determination to do so, and your efforts won't be wasted, though it is difficult. For the last topic, I will be discussing how being trauma-informed and empathetic about mental health can shape the community and social implications. The next scholarly source is a study from the Journal of Child and Family Studies published in 2022 by psychologists Chapman, Hoffman, Matlin, Strambler, and Professor Teebs. It covers how a trauma-informed approach to interacting with children can shape a community. To do so with trauma-specific services can be interventions that address trauma responses or symptoms and/or cognitive behavioral therapy with a professional to make efforts to address and understand trauma. By expanding therapeutic services in communities, through research methods like surveys, interviews, and group learning conferences, results detailed that participants identified 3 changes. 1. A shift in their perspective to include greater awareness and understanding of the potential signs of trauma, stress among children and adults. 2. A deeper understanding of their own adverse experiences, especially as children, that prompted reflection on how their own adverse experiences may have impacted their thoughts and interactions later in life. And 3. Acquisition of skills and behaviors of how to thoughtfully respond to trauma in the context of their work or family. Overall, the adults in the community/study learned basic ways to deal with their own health and children's health, which reframed individuals' perspectives and self-reflection, and gave the communities and individuals a sense of hope for the future. In essence, the main takeaways I hope you received during this podcast are the importance of understanding trauma, how it manifests in different people, what recovery means in ongoing trauma experiences, the significance of being trauma-informed for others, and the importance and considerations of being self-reflective, aware, and hopefulness. In her final paragraph, Beth Wainwright writes, "This does not scare me. It just reminds me that I must constantly check myself, my behaviors, my stability, my feelings, my overall wellness, and that the best thing I can do for myself, even if I do not get the desired response, is to be open. I encourage the same for you and me. Thank you so much for listening."